Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, is dead. Killed in an airstrike earlier today as U.S. and Israeli forces kicked off military operations in Iran. So today we're going to get into what we know about this decapitation strike, updates on U.S. and Israeli military operations, as well as the continued Iranian response, and what to watch for in the coming days. Now, a few hours ago, we started to get indications that Khamenei was targeted, then maybe injured, maybe killed, and finally, from President Trump, confirmation of his death, with the president saying, quote, Khamenei, one of the most evil people in history, is dead. This is not only justice for the people of Iran, but for all great Americans and these people from many countries throughout the world that have been killed or mutilated by Khamenei and his gang of bloodthirsty thugs. This is the single greatest chance for the Iranian people to take back their country. We are hearing that many in the IRGC, military, and other security and police forces no longer want to fight and are looking for immunity. He says, however, the heavy and pinpoint bombing will continue uninterrupted throughout the week or as long as necessary to achieve our objective of peace throughout the Middle East and indeed the world. And just a few hours ago, we did get a note from Senator Tom Cotton saying that the campaign against the Iranian regime is set to take weeks, not days. So be ready. By all accounts, it looks like this is just beginning. In terms of the details of the strike earlier today that killed Khamenei, the Times of Israel said Israel's initial strikes on Iran this morning reportedly targeted some 30 key Iranian regime leaders and military chiefs during a meeting headed by Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei. They say an unsourced Channel 12 news report says that Israel, having coordinated with the United States, dropped some 30 bombs on Khamenei's compound and that Khamenei was underground at that location. As of this recording, we don't have any footage showing that strike. We very well might get that. Israel in past decapitation strikes against Hamas or Hezbollah has released that footage. We have satellite imagery showing the results of that strike. And I do want to stress that Israel is making clear that this was an Israeli operation. Israeli bombs dropped from Israeli aircraft by Israeli fighter pilots. The United States was involved. We coordinated with Israel, but this specific going after senior regime officials, the senior regime official, was an Israeli operation. Now, on the U.S. side, we are starting to get more information about Operation Epic Fury, as it has been named. U.S. Central Command put out a note a few hours ago saying, quote, U.S. and partner forces began striking targets at 1:15 a.m. Eastern Time to dismantle the Iranian regime's security apparatus, prioritizing targets that posed an imminent threat. 1:15 a.m. Eastern means daylight in Iran, which is one of the ways that the U.S. caught the Iranian regime off guard. Is generally speaking, these attacks have happened at night. They say targets include Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps command and control facilities, Iranian air defense capabilities, missile and drone launch sites, and military airfields. They quoted Admiral Brad Cooper, the commander of U.S. Central Command, saying, quote, the president ordered bold action, and our brave soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, guardians, and Coast Guardsmen are answering the call. They say following the initial wave of U.S. and partner strikes, CENTCOM forces successfully defended against hundreds of Iranian missile and drone attacks, and importantly, they said there have been no reports of U.S. casualties or combat-related injuries. Damage to U.S. installations was minimal and has not impacted operations. More on that in a second. We're going to come back to some of these claims that, in fact, the U.S. put out a note kind of refuting some of the statements made by the IRGC as to the effectiveness of these strikes. CENTCOM says the first hours of the operation included precision munitions launched from air, land, and sea. Additionally, CENTCOM's Task Force Scorpion employed low-cost one-way attack drones for the first time in combat. Operation Epic Fury involves the largest regional concentration of American military firepower in a generation. So we don't have details on the one-way attack drones. These things look a lot like the Iranian Shahed-style drone, kind of reverse engineered from that, I would imagine. You have to, right, with the design look. Either way, we don't know the numbers. We don't know the targets. We don't know a lot of details there, but low-cost one-way attack drones were utilized by the United States in this strike. And Iran is continuing to use those, striking not just military, but civilian targets across the Middle East. Now, in terms of the timing here, CNN actually put out a report suggesting that Iran was considering preemptive strikes, which pressed the Trump administration into taking action and saying go with military forces beginning strikes earlier today. They quoted an administration official saying, quote, we had indicators that they intended to use the missiles potentially preemptively, and the president decided he was not going to sit back and allow America's forces in the region to absorb attacks from conventional missiles. We're not going to be held hostage by them, and we're not going to let them hit us first, because it would have substantially increased the risk to our troops in the region and to our allies. And this is something we've talked about in recent videos, the possibility of an Iranian preemptive attack. They're not stupid. They watched the buildup of U.S. military power, and if they think that a U.S. and Israeli strike is inevitable, it is, to a degree, in their best interest to try to strike first to catch us off guard. Sounds like that's what CNN is reporting here, is that they were at the very least considering that. I do want to mention that in that article, they say a source familiar with the intelligence contradicted this assertion, saying there were no indications that a preemptive attack from Iran was being planned. Now, turning to the Israeli side, they're providing more and more detailed information on their operation with a number of graphics and videos saying, quote, since this morning, approximately 200 fighter jets with the direction of IDF intelligence and the Israeli Air Force completed an extensive attack against the missile array and defense systems of the Iranian terror regime in western and central Iran. They say this is the largest military mission in the history of the Israeli Air Force, conducted following accurate planning and based on high-quality intelligence while synchronizing hundreds of fighter jets at the same time. They say the Israeli Air Force fighter jets dropped hundreds of munitions, targeting approximately 500 objectives, including aerial defense systems and missile launchers, in a number of locations in Iran. Simultaneously, the strikes on the defense systems allowed the expansion of the Israeli Air Force aerial superiority over Iranian territory and severely damaged the offensive capabilities of the Iranian regime, including the launch sites in western Iran. Now, Israel does not have 200 F-35s, so they're not flying all stealth fighters over Iranian airspace. That number leads me to believe that the F-35s were likely taking out some of the Iranian air defense assets in the western portion of the country, clearing the path temporarily in a portion of western Iran for other Israeli platforms like F-15s to come in and carry out additional strikes. 200 is a big number. That's a massive aerial campaign already kicked off by Israel. Now, in terms of the effects of these strikes so far, the spokesperson for the Red Crescent Society reported that over 200 people have so far been killed, with more than 740 injured. That was as of about 3 hours ago. I expect that number has probably changed, and we should note they do not break that out between military and civilian. On the military side, we have seen a significant number of senior officials already taken out, at least according to the IDF. They shared some graphics here saying the operation earlier today began with a preemptive strike after the IDF identified several locations throughout Tehran in which senior officials of the Iranian defense establishment had gathered. And just running through this list, and keep in mind, on top of this list is Khamenei. Now we can add him to this, but very similar to what we saw during the 12-day war, Israel has cracked the inside of the Iranian security apparatus to be able to carry out effective strikes against their leadership in real time this frequently. Either way, according to Israel, they eliminated the secretary of the Iranian Security Council, they say is one of the leaders of the Iranian security decision-making process and the personal advisor to the supreme leader for security affairs. In that same, or I guess they don't say that this is all one strike, but in a series of strikes, they also killed the commander of the IRGC, the head of the intelligence directorate, the head of the military bureau, the defense minister, the chairman of the Organization for Defense Innovation and Research, and then a former chairman of that same organization who had advanced the nuclear weapon production efforts. Notably, it does not look like the nuclear facilities have so far been targeted. More on that when we get to what we're watching for here in the coming days. Now, we did report earlier today, initial news coming out that a school was hit in Iran. We did get a report or a statement from the U.S. saying, quote, "We are aware of reports concerning civilian harm resulting from ongoing military operations. We take these reports seriously and are looking into them." Again, the U.S. military spokesperson speaking on the claims that a school was hit earlier today. Iran has since updated their numbers, saying that more than 100 people were killed in that attack. Again, Iran is saying that a school was targeted and struck by the United States or Israel. U.S., the only thing I've seen so far is the U.S. saying we're looking into it. And as mentioned in this morning's video, there's a wide array of possibilities still. There's more unknown than known. I do want to say that just the nature of all of this, right away I saw a lot of people looking at the video and the clip saying that this is Afghanistan from 20 years ago or Pakistan 4 years ago. The video location has been geo-verified. Like, we know for a fact that's where it is. The cause of the explosion is what is still being looked into. We'll do our best to update you as more information comes out. Turning to the Iranian side, their foreign minister continues to be kind of the key spokesperson, with putting out a statement earlier today saying, quote, "They're engaging with their counterparts from brotherly neighbors to clarify that Iran is solely exercising its right to self-defense under the UN Charter. They say Iran will not sit idly by as the United States attacks our people. They are regretful that the targets that they are striking are located in friendly states." And we'll show in a second here some of the strikes being carried out across the Gulf states. He said, "I do not know why the U.S. administration insists on beginning a negotiation with Iran and then attacking Iran in the middle of talks. The same thing happened last June. 48 hours ago, even Oman's foreign minister confirmed." He says, "We do not understand the reasons for the U.S. attack on Iran. Perhaps the U.S. administration was drug into it. Here's what I do know. Iran will punish those who kill our children. Our enmity is not with the American people who are being lied to yet again." And a quick note on the middle part there, the U.S. striking in the middle of the negotiations. We're talking about how this is kind of the last step for Iran. They're largely viewing this as an existential threat, all or nothing. They've got to go all out or the regime could fall. We also should probably recognize that negotiations with Iran are no longer going to happen. Whether you think it's the right move or the wrong move, this is 2 times in the last 8 months that the United States has talked about negotiations and scheduled the next round of negotiations, and then in the middle of that, begun military operations. So, again, however you feel about this issue, if you're Iran, it would just be silly of them to think that the next time something different would happen. Now, we have seen a continued drone and missile attacks being carried out by Iran across the Gulf all day, a significantly larger and more robust response than we saw during the 12-day war. Notably, they are not just targeting Israel, although we did see, and I think it was the 3rd or the 4th wave of missiles fired from Iran earlier today. At least a few impacts were recorded in Tel Aviv. So the most recent information I have there is that around 7 people were verified as having been wounded. Again, very limited information coming out of Israel showing the effects of these strikes, although we are getting a little bit from the Home Front Command showing that certainly some locations have been hit. There's certainly some damage. We don't quite know the extent of that damage. Iran as well has kind of branched out. We're seeing them continuing to hit U.S. bases. We documented this morning a couple Shahed drone strikes against U.S. military facilities, specifically the naval base, the head of the U.S. Fifth Fleet in Bahrain. Looks like it was taking a pretty significant, couple significant strikes earlier today. We saw additional footage of more Shaheds targeting the Fifth Fleet headquarters, and then some other military bases, possibly Jordan, possibly Kuwait. The footage isn't exactly verified there. But over the course of the last couple hours, we have seen, there were Patriot interceptors, what appears to be an attempt to shoot down an incoming Iranian missile. It looks like the missile gets through, right? Always hard to tell with some of this stuff. If it was partially intercepted, if it missed. Either way, that was in Qatar, the El Adid Air Base. We're seeing a significant uptick in Iran going after civilian targets. So a number of drones impacting apartment buildings and commercial civilian areas in Bahrain. We saw the Dubai International Airport was hit earlier today. There's been a few impacts already in downtown Dubai. The Kuwait airport was hit. And what you're looking at here is Iran trying to do everything they can to get the United States and Israel to stop attacking inside their country. So they know they cannot go toe-to-toe with the U.S. military. That shouldn't come as a shock to anyone. And they're largely not trying to do that. What they're doing by going after the UAE, going after Bahrain, going after Qatar, going after Kuwait, and our other partners in the region is trying to get our allies to come to the United States and say, this is too much. This shouldn't be bleeding over. What's happening? And maybe forcing the United States to dial it back, reallocate air defense assets to protect places like Dubai, or ideally for Iran, stop it altogether. So we're seeing a bit of the crazy work of Iran here. Again, we have to view this through the lens of this is their last chance. Like they're throwing everything they got. They are risking turning the entire region that is, most of the region is already against Iran, but for the most part, these countries are just kind of standing by, and some of them turned off their airspace and said the United States will not fly over to strike Iran. So to show you how dangerous a situation the regime is right now, they are risking all of that in the hopes that these strikes in, say, downtown Dubai will turn enough of the Emiratis against the United States and force Trump to halt the strikes. In that same vein, we did get a notification earlier today. The commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps said that they have shut down the Strait of Hormuz, which is a significant traffic hub, commercial traffic hub, right there off the coast of Iran. This has always been a concern. They have the ability to do this relatively easily, just based off of the control they have on land and then the ships they have in the water there. It wouldn't take a lot. We saw this with the Houthis effectively shutting down the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. You don't need to sink every ship. You just need to increase the risk that it's going to happen. That said, it doesn't look like any ships have been targeted so far, and I'm seeing occasional reports that some ships are still transiting in that area, just kind of prepared that something more could happen. That, too, is the type of thing that risks turning the entire Gulf against Iran. They are hoping that before it gets to that point, the pressure is too much and it forces the United States to back off. Now, for the first time since these strikes began, Iran is now claiming that they have inflicted casualties and significant damage on U.S. forces across the region. The fourth statement coming from the IRGC earlier today said in the fifth wave of the operation, they hit a ship in the Jebel Ali port, hit by 4 drones and completely disabled. They said they targeted the American naval base in Kuwait with 4 ballistic missiles and 12 drones, which led to the destruction of its main infrastructure and caused a number of deaths and injuries among American forces, also saying that they hit an MST-class combat support ship in the Indian Ocean. Now, the United States, for the most part, we've not responded to any of this, all right? And we don't have any video verification showing that any of those strikes took place or that they were effective if they did take place. CENTCOM actually put out a note pushing back here on a couple of these key items. They said the Iranian regime claims to have killed 50 U.S. service members. That is a lie. There have been no reported U.S. casualties. They say the IRGC claims that a U.S. Navy ship was struck by missiles. They also say that was a lie. No U.S. Navy ship has been struck. The Armada is fully operational. They say the Iranian regime is claiming severe damage at multiple U.S. bases. That is a lie. They say damage to U.S. installations was minimal and has not impacted operations. Now, those first two are kind of black and white, right? Are there U.S. casualties or no? And the U.S. is saying no, 0 casualties at this point, which is crazy, by the way. The fact that we're, this far into this operation, this many sorties that have been flown, this many bombs dropped, missiles fired, and this many senior Iranian officials eliminated for 0 casualties is wild, just so you know. That's kind of a black or white. Either they are or they aren't. And the U.S. is saying there aren't. When it comes to ships being hit, they are or they aren't. And the U.S. is saying they aren't. The damage is a little bit different, more of a gray area. I mean, again, we have seen the footage that very clearly Iranian drones and missiles have impacted at a number of U.S. bases across the region. The U.S. has said that that damage has not impacted operations. So maybe that's how they're viewing the lack of damage. But I will say that just based off what we've seen, there is damage, 100%. It's just the scope of it. Maybe Iran is playing it up and the United States is perhaps playing it down a bit. Now, in terms of what comes next, we are continuing to keep our eye on the Iranian proxies. Again, that is far from a worst-case scenario, but it makes things much more difficult if the Houthis and Hezbollah and Hamas, to the degree they can, and the militias across Iraq and Syria rise up and start attacking U.S. forces or Israel. Not a lot quite yet. From the Houthis and Hezbollah, they've essentially said we stand with Iran, but they haven't said anything about carrying out operations. We did get what might be the first proxy attacks. The Islamic Resistance in Iraq put out a note saying they'd carried out like 12 or 16 drone attacks against American forces in Iraq. I've not seen that confirmed by the United States, and that specific group has in the past, like they do carry out drone attacks and mortar and rocket attacks, all that stuff. They've also just made stuff up at times, like zero proof at all that it happened. And they'll just say like, yeah, we launched like 7 drones at Israel. And everyone's like, we have no idea what you're talking about. So sometimes there's a PR move there, worth keeping that in mind. But as of now, the proxies have not really been on the radar. We are going to want to keep a watch on the pace of the Iranian missile attacks. It has not really slowed down at all. Iran put out a statement earlier saying that they have moved from their older missiles to some of their newer, more advanced missiles. Now, whether that's the reason that we saw some get through in Tel Aviv earlier, or a matter of overwhelming air defenses, or Israel being low at certain times on interceptor missiles, we don't know. But Iran is saying they are transitioning to some of their fancier stuff. We'll see how that shakes out. But also, it's a big question of how many Iran has available, right? So we know that this is a domestic manufacturing process. They have bunkers supposedly full of these missiles able to reach U.S. bases across the region as well as Israel. We don't really know how many they have. We don't really know how many they lost during the 12-day war, how many are not salvageable. All of that is a bit up in the air, and the next couple days will be telling if Iran is able to keep up this pace of missile launches throughout the region. Now, over the next 12 hours, I would expect to see an increase in U.S. air power over Iran, possibly even going after their nuclear facilities. I don't know that we've seen much manned U.S. aircraft in the skies over Iran quite yet. It looks like most of the strikes have been carried out by standoff munitions. Those that were air-launched, likely still standoff, going after air defense assets and kind of clearing a path for, say, B-2 bombers and maybe even B-1 bombers. We'll see. But manned aircraft overhead. To that end, we did get a note earlier today from David Albright at the Institute for Science and International Security, maybe? ISIS is the acronym. I'll put it up here. It's great. You got to come up with a new acronym if it's ISIS. Anyways, they said they have been monitoring satellite imagery of the nuclear facilities, and as of today, it does not look like any of them were hit. They say so far no evidence of airstrikes against these facilities at Natanz, Pickaxe Mountain Complex, Esfahan, and Talgahan. They say the tunnel entrances to Pickaxe Mountain remain open and accessible. Only 2 of the 3 Esfahan entrances are visible in the Esfahan image and show no damage. It shouldn't be a big shock. We haven't heard any claims that the United States or Israel has gone after the nuclear program, but based off of what President Trump said in his statement first thing this morning, how this is, if not one of the big red lines, the Iranian nuclear program, and they're pursuing a nuclear weapon, you would expect that something would be done with those facilities, going after them again. In fact, that was a major argument in recent days, is that Iran or Israel and the United States saying there are indications that Iran is restarting their program and has the idea to pursue a nuclear weapon. So the nuclear facilities are likely on the target block. I would not be shocked if we see those hit from heavy bombers here, large U.S. bombers, over the course of the next 12 to 24 hours. But that's all we got for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.